Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, as the landmark inter-Korean family reunions enter their second round, pundits say following the event, Pyongyang will likely suggest reviving trade and investment between the two sides. And as for humanitarian aid from Seoul. Seoul strongly protests Tokyo's renewed claims to Korea's Dokdo Island over the weekend, accusing Japan of rationalizing its imperialistic history. The Korean government releases an English-language version of its video that shows how Dokdo is historically and geographically Korean territory. Plus, a group of 20 finance ministers and heads of international financial institutions pledged to increase their GDP by an additional 2% over the next 5 years and create millions of new jobs. Daybreak begins now.
Thanks for joining us. To all our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, February 24th here in Seoul. You're watching Daybreak and I'm Choi Yu-sun. There were many more tears of joy, but also of great sorrow on Sunday as the second round of reunions for families separated since the Korean War got underway at the North's Mount Kumgang resort. This round, scheduled to run through Tuesday, started just one day before Seoul's annual military drills, with Washington set to begin on this Monday. Our Shin Se-min reports.
There are more heart-wrenching and highly emotional scenes Sunday as families look back and forth at the faces and the aged pictures of their long-lost fathers and brothers separated since the Korean War. The second round of tearful reunions that have been underway since last week began Sunday at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort. Families currently living in the U.S. and Canada came all the way to the separated peninsula in the hope of meeting their lost families. This time, 88 North Koreans had requested to meet 357 South Korean relatives. Most of the family members from the North were initially living in the South before they were taken by volunteer troops when the Korean War broke out. Family members in the southern part of the peninsula said they even held memorial services for their family members who did not return home. Just like the first round, participants from both sides of the border are scheduled to meet 6 separate times for a total of 11 hours. The much-anticipated reunion went ahead despite growing tensions about Seoul and Washington's joint military drills that begin Monday. The annual Joint Key Resolve and Full Eagle drills have once again drawn fierce criticism from the North. However, a South Korean military official says the drill will be held in a low-key manner considering the ongoing reunions. The North state-run Dodong-sinmun newspaper quoted a North Korean official at the UN Charter meeting last week as saying the U.S. was the main culprit for proceeding with the military exercise. Experts say that following the reunion event, Pyongyang will likely suggest reviving trade and investment between the two Koreas and ask for humanitarian aid from Seoul. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
In the U.S. state of Virginia, where there's a large Korean-American community, the so-called East Sea movement regarding naming of water between Korea and Japan in school texts has produced some tangible results. But will the sentiment travel across the country to the western state of California, where there's also a large population of Korean-Americans? Our Na Young-young followed this report from Los Angeles.
The U.S. state of California, home to the largest population of Korean Americans and Japanese Americans in the country. Some may see this as the next ground for a political battle over how to refer to the body of water between Korea and Japan in school textbooks. Virginia State will soon require the Korean preferred title of East Sea to be used alongside the Sea of Japan in its textbooks, while in New York a similar bill has also been proposed. But the issue has not stirred up much attention yet in California.
저희들은 LA에서는 먼저 소녀상을 지키는 데에 대해서
The president of the Korean American Federation in Los Angeles says the greater LA area has been and still is busy trying to protect the so-called Comfort Women Memorial statue in Glendale Central Park from being removed.
일본에서는 굉장히 이 반응이 나쁜
So right now is not the most suitable time to raise another issue and divert attention, whether it be the East Sea Bill or anything else.
동해 변기도 더 나가서 이것이 어느 정도의 완성 단계가 되면은
But Pez stresses that if the issue surfaces in the area, the Korean American community will be sure to throw itself behind the movement 100%. Speculation is, though, despite the large Japanese American community, this may not be an issue of great contention within California, much like in Virginia, partially due to the fact that Japan's history of immigration to the U.S. compared to that of Koreans dates much further back.
If there are Japanese Americans speaking about this with the same interest that Korean Americans are speaking about it, it most likely would be what we call Shin Se-min, or first generation. My guess is even if you were to speak to Japanese expatriates or students studying here, most of them would not have a strong opinion on what's going on in Virginia.
The variable would rather be how much more proactive Tokyo will be in its opposition to the East Sea movement in California, given its failed attempts to stop the bill from going through in Virginia. But one thing for sure at this point is that the Korean American community will likely rally behind the EC movement if the issue indeed surfaces in California. 나현경, Arirang News, Los Angeles.
The Korean government has launched a strong protest against Japan's renewed claims to Korea's Dokdo Island over the weekend. Seoul's foreign ministry is accusing Tokyo of rationalizing the imperialistic history. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korea's foreign ministry summoned Hisashi Michigami, a senior minister at Japan's embassy in Seoul over the weekend, to protest against Tokyo's recent move to advance its territorial claims over Korea's Dokdo Island. Korea is up in arms over a Japanese official's attendance at a local ceremony on Saturday that claims Dokdo, which it calls Takeshima, falls under Japanese jurisdiction. A vice minister-level official attended the ceremony held in Japan's Shimane Prefecture to celebrate Takeshima Day, which is designated on February 22nd every year to reiterate Tokyo's claims over Dokdo. Seoul has repeatedly warned that having government officials participate in the event would seriously impact Korea-Japan relations, as Dokdo Island is Korean territory and is under Korean jurisdiction. The ceremony came just days after Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshida Suga suggested Tokyo should reconsider a 1993 apology for sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. The apology is known as the Kono Statement and was issued by then Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono to apologize for the atrocities Japan committed during its imperialist past. Over the weekend, Seoul's foreign ministry released an English-language video promoting Korea's sovereignty over Dokdo on its website and on YouTube. The website also includes a link to an animation about Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. The animation drew global attention to the so-called comfort women issue after it was released at an international animation festival in France. The ministry also plans to bring the issue to the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva next month. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world,
return to the negotiations. President Park Geun-hye plans, given the current circumstances.
on your way to work or at home,
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a.
tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday a two-day meeting of group of 20 finance ministers and central bankers has wrapped up in Australia, with member countries embracing goals to foster global economic growth. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Financial leaders of the world's 20 largest economies on Sunday vowed to take concrete actions to boost global growth by increasing investment and employment. The vision was agreed upon at the Group of 20 meeting in Sydney during the weekend. A communiqué said the countries would develop ambitious but realistic policies that would stimulate job creation. The finance chiefs and central bankers embraced a goal of boosting the gross domestic product of the countries by at least 2% above the current expected levels over the next 5 years. This translates into generating $2 trillion in economic activity, which in turn is expected to create tens of millions of new jobs. Another agenda high on the list was the need for tighter regulations on cross-border taxation. The officials agreed to intensify cooperation to tackle offshore tax evasion and drafted a series of standards for sharing information across borders. Starting next year, an automatic exchange of banking information will take effect among the G20 members. Australian Treasurer Joe Hockey, the host of the meeting, said the new standards would enhance transparency and reduce tax evasion opportunities. Another key concern at the meeting was the shock being felt by emerging economies from the U.S. Federal Reserve's tapering of its stimulus program, leading to a capital flight from vulnerable economies. The communiqué said all central banks maintain their commitment that monetary policy settings will continue to be carefully calibrated and clearly communicated. The officials also call for better communication and more transparency on policies that affect international markets. Each country will now bring their own detailed growth strategy to the G20 Brisbane Summit in November. The G20, which accounts for 85% of the global economy, consists of major economies such as the U.S., as well as emerging economies including China and India. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And on the sidelines of the G20 meeting, Korea and Australia have signed a currency swap deal that's expected to boost bilateral trade and eventually help bolster both economies. The $4.6 billion agreement signed by the two countries' central bank governors in Sydney on Sunday will be effective for 3 years and can be extended by mutual consent. The Korean government has been seeking to take advantage of currency swap deals to settle trade payments with its own currency and to reduce dependency on the U.S. dollar. Australia is Korea's 7th largest trading partner. A government-led probe into business management and supervision conditions at 30 public institutions here in Korea will be launched later on this Monday. Officials say the Board of Audit and Inspection will inspect 4 public companies, including the Korea Gas Corporation and 2 public financial institutions through the end of March. 20 other public institutions will be audited from April to June. The Board of Audit and Inspection says its 200-member team will be tasked with running the audits and giving advice on how to improve structural and managerial issues within the institutions. The spending gap between the haves and the have-nots keeps expanding. Latest data shows the richest 20% of Korean families now spend nearly 7 times more money on education compared to the bottom 20%. Statistics Korea says that the top 20% spent over 500,000 won, or roughly $470 a month on education last year, compared to the lowest 20% who spent just over $70 a month. Experts say high-income families spend more on education so their children can maintain or improve the family's social status. Around 40% of people surveyed in a separate report last year felt their kids would exceed their social status, while 44% believed they would slip down.
Good morning, everyone. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. Ukraine's parliament has voted for the new Speaker of the Assembly to become interim president. Alexander Turchinov called on lawmakers to form an interim government by Tuesday. These latest developments follow the dismissal of President Viktor Yanukovych on Saturday. MPs also voted Saturday to hold new presidential elections on May 25th. Yanukovych's whereabouts are unknown as he fled to the east of the country country after saying he refused to step down. Former Prime Minister and opposition icon Yulia Tymoshenko, who was released from prison, called for a continuation of protests. 88 people have been killed in clashes since last Tuesday. Sunday was much calmer, but protesters remained on the streets of Kiev. A car bomb explosion killed at least 14 people and injured scores more near a field hospital in Syria's rebel-held town of Atme, close to the border with Turkey on Sunday. It is not yet clear who was behind the attack. A camp in the region is home to thousands of refugees. Meanwhile, on Saturday, the UN Security Council, for the first time, unanimously agreed on access to humanitarian aid in Syria. And moving over to Thailand, more blood was spilled in Bangkok on Sunday as 2 people, including a 12-year-old boy, were killed in a car bomb attack in a shopping district. At least 22 others were wounded. Posting on her official Facebook page, Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra condemned the violent acts of anti-government protesters, saying they were, quote, terrorist acts for political gain. Demonstrators have been demanding Yingluck step down for months, as they say she is merely a puppet for her exiled brother and former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Pope Francis and 18 new Vatican cardinals gathered at a celebration mass at St. Peter's Basilica on Sunday, following the official appointment of 19 cardinals from around the world the day before. Korea's Andrew Yeom-soo-jung was among them. Pope Francis told the new cardinals to be good servants, not good bosses, stressing Catholic leaders should not consider themselves privileged. His words reflect the simple style Francis has shown since his election last year. Cardinals are the most senior clergymen below the Pope and his closest advisors.
Well, despite all the controversy leading to the Sochi Winter Games, everything went pretty much as smoothly as possible, and it all ended with a grand closing ceremony marking the end of the Sochi Winter Olympics and a start of a new Winter Olympics 4 years later. Now, with the Winter Games closing with a grand fashion, the last Olympic ring did open up this time as the world saw a theatric display at the closing ceremony. And turns out they decided to go a bit informal this time, as countries were not introduced individually, but instead went for an intermingling spirit as the $51 billion event came to a close. And with the end of the Sochi Winter Games, the torch is now passed over to Pyeongchang. Now, the goal for Team Korea going into the Sochi Games was to finish within the top 10 in the medal count, but despite having the most number of athletes competing this time, well, things didn't turn out the way they wanted, but still finished off with a couple of more medals before it all ended. Now, thanks to Park Seung-hee's gold medal finish, followed by 17-year-old Shim Se-min's bronze medal finish at the women's 1,000-meter short track event, Korea was able to add a couple of more medals and prove their dominance in the sport. Park Seung-hee would finish off with 2 gold medals and a bronze, with Shim Se-min finishing her Olympic debut with 1 gold, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. Meanwhile, the men's speed skating team did finish with a medal as Korea earned a silver medal in the men's speed skating team pursuit event, just falling to the Netherlands, who absolutely dominated the sport this year. And after all that, Korea finishes 13th overall with 3 gold, 3 silver, and 2 bronze medals. If there was one athlete who really shined during the Sochi Winter Games, it was Victor An, or An Hyun-soo of Russia. And with a ton of expectations for the short track star prior to the Games, well, he met those expectations. Now, competing in his first Olympics in 8 years, the former South Korean short track star started off with a bronze medal in the 1,500-meter medal event, but would later dominate the other events, claiming gold in the 500-meter, 1,000-meter, and the 5,000-meter men's short track relay, claiming 3 gold medals and a bronze for a total of 4 medals. And it wasn't just the Russians cheering for An, as Koreans here in the nations cheered him on as well. Now, during the weekend, Korea's podium finishes in the short track and speed skating events were overshadowed by the women's figure skating event, which resulted in Kim Yeon-ah finishing off with a silver medal. And what do you know? It's not dying down. And fans worldwide are now trying to petition the International Skating Union via change.org, an online petition site stating that, quote, "This is not for Yeon-ah Kim. This is for the fair sportsmanship that is supposed to be central to the world event of the Olympics." While it currently has over 2 million people who signed the online petition, more controversy was brought on when gold medalist Adelina Sotnikova was seen hugging Alla Shoknisova, who was a judge in the event. Moving on, it was a great Winter Games for the host nation as Russia finished off the competition after finishing first in the overall medal count. Thanks to some last-minute gold medal finishes in the four-man bobsleigh and the men's 50-kilometer mass start, Russia finishes first in the overall medal count with 13 gold medals, including 11 silver and 9 bronze for a total of 33. Now, this is the first time in 20 years that Russia finished first in the overall medal count. And with that, let's close off our Sochi coverage by taking a look at the final medal count during the Sochi Winter Games. Of course, as we take a look here, once again, we see that Russia is in first for the first time in 20 years with 13 gold medals, with Norway finishing strong in second place with 11. Canada in third thanks to a couple of gold medals in hockey, with the U.S. and Netherlands finishing fourth and fifth, with Korea once again finishing 13th overall with 3 gold, 3 silver, and 2 bronze for a total of 8 medals. And congratulations to all the athletes, and that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good Monday morning to you. I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, Monday starts out the week with some very nice springtime weather conditions. Today will reach at about 10 degrees Celsius here in Seoul, and it will be warmer in other regions with lots of blue sky and not much else in the afternoon. But it looks like the level of fine dust particles will be relatively higher than usual in the capital area, Jeollado and Gwangju. So if you're in those regions, be sure to have a face mask before heading out and drink water frequently during the day. Now, the first part of the week will be warm and nice, and the second part of the week should be slightly cooler with a chance of nationwide shower on Thursday. But still, pleasant and nice week is ahead of us for most of regions for this week. With that, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low in Seoul is at 0, but will get up to 10, while Gwangju will top out at 13, while Daegu and Busan will see a high of 14 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju and Daejeon will climb up to 13 and 12 respectively, and Mount Kumgang will reach to positive side at 2 later in the day. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world.
And those are the stories we have for you this hour. Join us again for the latest on the day's headlines on our next newscast at 10 a.m. Korea time. Thank you for watching.